And there are three. That's why this lesson is divided into three segments. The first part will be Judaism. The second part is Christianity. And the third part, Islam. We will begin with the roots of Christianity and Islam, and it is Judaism. And when we say Judaism, we do not refer to Judai. That's a very old joke, but I hope that makes you smile or smirk before we begin. Now, for this lesson, these are the most essential learning competencies that I would like to impart. So after this lesson, you may have you should have examined the brief history, practices, and related issues of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions. And of course, should have compared and contrasted the uniqueness and similarities of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions. This second learning competency is the very content of your creative output, specifically when you do the comparative analysis of these three monotheistic Abrahamic religions. So let us begin. This is the very prayer of Judaism, the very heart, the very core of their faith. And this is what they always proclaim. It is called the Shema prayer. The Shema prayer. And it can be read in our Christian Bible from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. It says, Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, Adonai our God, Adonai is one. This is the core of their teaching, particularly their belief in one God. Because among the three monotheistic religions, this is the first monotheistic religion, the first systematic, organized religion that is monotheistic. Hear Israel, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And you are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your resources. The commandments are summarized in this very sentence, in this very phrase, in this very prayer. Now, another term unique to Judaism will be the term shalom. Shalom. It is a Hebrew word which means, of course, alam natin lahat yan, peace. But this is not the peace that we knew. This is not the common peace. This is not silence. This is not quietness. This is not the absence of war. Shalom means having the fullest and complete sense of the word peace. It means being in the right order of relationship. Being in the right order of relationship with God, with your neighbor, with yourself, and with nature. Total package, total peace. And this kind of peace, as we discuss or as we study these monotheistic religions, the interruption, no, the destruction of this peace was brought about by the fall of man. The fall of man, from the time of Adam and Eve, destroyed the right order of relationship. The right order of relationship. Nakita nyo, right order. But let's be God first. Just like what is being proclaimed in the Shema. Hear Israel, the first thing that they teach will be Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And you are to love Adonai your God before anything else. Second will be peace with your neighbor, peace with other people. As a community, as a society, the commandments were given, this is according to Judaism, the commandments are given so that the people will know the right order of relationship. Of course, number one will be to God, and number two will be how they will now relate and interact with each other to avoid conflict, to avoid crimes, to avoid any other occurrence that might disrupt the peaceful community of the chosen people of God. Of course, the right order of relationship with the self. That's the third. The right order of relationship with the self. What are you? Who are you? And it can always be traced back to the right order of relationship with the Creator, with God. And lastly, the right order of relationship with nature. And we all know that in this generation that we live in, we belong to this generation that is already having some sort of reflection about our relationship with nature. Because from the onset, No? Kaya tayo nagkaroon ng mga environmental crisis today. It's because of it's because of this unhealthy order of relationship with nature. We subdued it. It's as if it's ours. Inubos natin. It's as if meron pang kasunod. But we forget that some resources can never be replaced. So that's part, the destruction of that right order of relationship brought about by the fall of man. It was destroyed. It was altered. So we have this kind of problems now. Now, another concept in the Jewish tradition that can be traced back to the Jewish tradition would be the concept of time. Our concept of time that is linear and not cyclical. When we say linear, there is a beginning and there is an ending. Beginning, middle, and then ending. No? It is not just simply cyclical. This is what makes Judaism, Christianity, and Islam different from some Asian religions like Hinduism and Judaism and Buddhism, which both believes in reincarnation. Pero ang monotheistic Abrahamic religions will not believe in reincarnation simply because of their concept of time. You are irreplaceable. Galing din yun sa concept ng time na yan. No? You are only one. You cannot be replaced. You cannot be born again into another creature, unlike in the concept of reincarnation, wherein you will be born maybe another human being or maybe another creature. Pero dito hindi. It's a linear history. Meaning when you begin, you will end. And then, of course, that's the same thing that will be brought to the afterlife. You're still the same. You're still the same. You, the same soul. Hindi ka na magiging ipis o hindi ka magiging gagamba in your afterlife or in your next life. Because for them, there is no such thing as next life, only afterlife. It's a different thing. So that's a very unique concepts found or that can be traced to Judaism. Now, I want you to bring out your pen and paper, and I want you to write the following terms. I want you to search for the meaning of this later, no, as we progress. Some words, I will mention some words, but should I not mention the words, it's up to you to search for the meaning. So this will be our word bank. First word will be Adonai. I mentioned it earlier in the Shema prayer. Second will be covenant, Torah, Nevim, and Ketuvim, Talmud, Kosher, Holocaust, Messiah, and Diaspora. So I want you to take down notes. I want you to search for the meaning. Later, kapag nabanggit ko, you better write them down. All right? So these are our word bank. So let's begin our lesson proper. Our lesson is divided into 3 parts: the creed, the code, and the cult. So when we say the creed, this is what they profess. This is what they believe. And we have a glimpse of what Judaism believes. Kanina, when I read the Shema prayer, it's the very core of their profession of faith, that God is one, that God is alone, that you should worship only Him. And the context of love of neighbor will always be in the context of the love of God. So this is part 1, credo. Now, balikan natin muna ito. Yan. The inscription that you can see on your screen. Ayan. Kapag nakikita yan ng mga Hudyo, kapag nakikita yan ng practicing Jews, ng mga practicing ng Judaism, they will not read it. It's the unutterable name of God. Before that, flashback muna tayo ng konti. In Genesis, this name of God was not used. This name of God was not used. The name of God that was used in Genesis, dalawa. One will be El, E and L, singular. And another will be Elohim. Elohim is the plural form. But for Judaism, kahit Elohim is in the plural form, they always take it as for singularity of God, that God is one. But He was called Elohim, specifically in the passages that says, let us make man after our own image and our likeness, Elohim. But As the history of the chosen people of God progressed, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, when Moses asked, remember the story of Moses and the burning bush. He saw a bush that is burning, but it is not being consumed. The fire is still there. No, he asked when this God talking in the burning bush asked him that he will be sent to the Israelites to tell the message of God, that he heard, that he hears the cry of the people. Moses asked him, sino ang sasabihin ko na nagsugo sa akin? Who will I tell them that sent me? And the God there in the burning bush said, tell them you are sent by I am who I am. I am who I am. And in the Hebrew language, yan na si Yahweh. The very word, the very inscription that you can see on your screen. And for the Jewish tradition, they will not read it because that's the name of God. God is greater than them. They cannot read something that is greater than them. They cannot simply read it. That's the reason. They are afraid because they believe that when they read a holy name, because they are not worthy, they will die. So instead of reading Yahweh, they replaced it. Whenever they see it in the scriptures, they will replace it with Adonai. So balikan natin kanina yung Shema. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. It's not Adonai, it's actually Yahweh. But since they cannot read it because it's the very holy name of God, they replaced it with Adonai. Adonai is simply translated as Lord. In the Greek translation, Adonai is translated as Kyrios. Kyrios was applied to Jesus Christ later on in the New Testament. Lord. For the Hebrews, it's Adonai. So they will not read Yahweh. Shema Israel, Yahweh, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. No, they will not read it that way. They will read it Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, to respect and to give reverence to the name of this one God that made himself known to Moses in the burning bush. So that's the first part. It's about God. A God who is personal, a God that is powerful, a God that created everything in the universe. That's the first part. God created everything. That's the very first sentence. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth in Genesis. And that is part of their profession of faith. We are just mere creatures. And we are dealing here with someone or something that is greater than us. Credo. That's their creed. Now, according to Moses Maimonides, there are 13. By the way, Moses Maimonides is different from Moses of the Bible. All right. Moses Maimonides was a Jewish philosopher and physician, and he proposed 13 fundamental precepts or 13 fundamental doctrines or articles of Jewish faith. Number 1, God alone is the creator. God alone is the creator. Hindi na kailangan itong God na ito ng kahit na sino in creating. Unlike other narratives or other myths na na-form sa paligid ng territory ng Israel, God alone is the creator. It proves or it suggests that this God is a powerful God. Number 2, God is absolutely one. There is no other. God is absolute as professed in their Shema prayer. Number 3, God has no body or bodily shape because they believe that God is pure spirit. A pure spirit cannot be bodily. Kaya walang body, walang bodily shape. Number 4, God is the first and the last. In the context of time, when we say God is the first and the last, it simply means this God is not like us, that is subject to the changes of space and time. This God is outside space and time. Number 5, God alone deserves worship, obedience, and praise. Hence, in the Ten Commandments, later on when we talk about the code, they give premium on the reverence of the Lord's Day or the Sabbath day. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day, the day dedicated to Yahweh, because He deserves it. He deserves our worship. He deserves our obedience. He is the only one who deserves our praise. Number 6, number 7, number 8 will be about the prophets. Number 6, the words of God's prophets are true. The warnings of the prophets are true. Their prophecy should come true. Number 7, the prophecy of Moses. Moses for them is the greatest and the first and the greatest prophet, and is considered as the father of all prophets. The words of Moses or the prophecy of Moses is true. And his words can be read in the first 5 books of the Bible, even in the Hebrew Bible, and it call it the Torah. Kanina sa vocabulary na nakita niyo sa Torah. Torah will be the first 5 books in the Christian Bible. That's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The words of Moses can be read there. Now, the words of Moses, the one that can be seen there, it's not him alone. It is not his words alone. God gave that to Moses. Kaya yung 8th precepts nila, 8th precept, God gave the Torah to Moses. And this Torah, the law, is perfect. That's the 9th. It is not subject to change, and no other law will be given. In the Christian tradition, later on, Jesus Christ will tell us, I do not come to abolish the law, because the law is perfect. Jesus said He came to fulfill the law. Kasi si Jesus ay Hudyo. He's a faithful Jew. So of course, He knew that the Torah is perfect, and it will not be subject to change, and no other law will be given. Because God cannot change. God cannot contradict Himself. 10th, God knows all the thoughts and deeds of human beings, meaning this God is very personal. Number 2, this God is all-knowing. He is omniscient. Number 11, God rewards and punishes according to one's deeds. That's the reason why there is this obsession to laws, obsession to rules among Jewish people, simply because they want to do what is right, because they don't want to be punished if they did something wrong. Number 12, God's Messiah will come at an unexpected time. And until now, they're still waiting for the Messiah. Even though in the Christian tradition, Jesus proclaimed Himself as the Messiah, some of the Jews during the time of Jesus did not believe. And up until now, the descendants of these people are still waiting for their Messiah. Messiah means Savior. It comes from the Hebrew word Messiah. Messiah. Anointed one. The one that will save. And lastly, number 13, the dead will be resurrected. The Jewish people, just like Christianity and Islam, Christians and Muslims, believe in the resurrection of the dead. In the resurrection of the dead. So these are the 13 precepts of Judaism that was proposed by a philosopher and physician, Moses Maimonides. Now we go to sana naghang siya. Those are the 13 precepts suggested by precepts of faith, articles of faith suggested by Moses Maimonides, a philosopher and a physician. Now let's go to another important Jewish concept, and that is about covenant. Covenant. So there is a difference between covenant and contract, but sometimes we interchange them. Ito rin ang reason why I think that in marriage, the covenant Yun yung nasa loob ng rights. The contract will be the legal aspect of it. As in the secular legal aspect of it. Pero even though there is no marriage contract, if there is a covenant inside the right, I think that is still a valid marriage. Nagko-contract lang naman ay yung may expiration ng contract. In terms of covenant, it has no expiration. Okay. Judaism is about covenants. From time immemorial, from the time of Adam and Eve, God already made this covenant with them. After the flood, God also entered into a covenant with Noah and his descendants. When the time of Abraham, the same thing happens, and so on and so forth. The Jewish Bible, the entirety of the Jewish Bible is all about this God initiating the calling of his people to himself. The Jewish people are aware of this, that they are not the one initiating this relationship. It is this God who initiates the relationship. These are covenants are God's initiative of calling his people to himself. And he always utter, I will be your God and you will be my people. I am yours, you are mine. That's always the covenant. Every time, even every time he renews this covenant with the people. Kasi ang problema sa Jewish people, parang tayo din yan eh. Ang paglalakbay ng mga ng Israelita during the time of Moses, even after Moses, was marked with a consistency of God being in covenant, people breaking the covenant, God again calling the people into covenant, and then the people will break the covenant. Then another one, God will again enter into a covenant with them. It's a continuous process of God entering into a covenant, and then the people will break the covenant. So covenant, according to Scott Hahn, is the only word that will do to describe the relationship between God and humanity. We are not his property. We are his adopted sons and daughters. Contracts, on the other hand, create temporary and contingent arrangements. Temporary, contingent arrangement of property. Covenants create permanent family bonds. So this God, the God of the Jews, that does not only want to enter into the lives of these people. They want to create a family. He wants to create a family. He wants to create a family. Now, through covenants, this God formed and reformed this human family that he created. And through covenants, he made and remade our earthly families in his own familial image and likeness. That's how covenant is important in the Jewish history, the Jewish people. In good time and bad, throughout history, the Jews have felt sustained by this formal, solemn, and binding agreement made with Adonai. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. The only problem is, again, stiff-necked people. The Israelites will always be called in the scriptures stiff-necked people, hard-headed people. Sabi ko ng Diyos, I am here. I am offering myself to you. I give myself to you. I will take you as my people, but take me as I am. But these people the tendency of these people will always be to revert from that invitation. So nangyayari, no? Even the Israelites are aware of this, the Jewish people are aware of this, that whenever they do that, whenever they become unfaithful to the covenant, it can be seen in their history, God allowed some things, not so good things, to happen to them. The flood of Noah, the destruction of the cities, the wars. What else? The losing of the Ark of the Covenant. What else? Later on, yung God allowed powerful countries to invade them and to banish them from their land. It was not God's doing. It was the product of these people's unfaithfulness to God. But then again, even after that, God will enter into a covenant with them. Makulit din. Because God wants to be in a relationship with His people. Now, a point for reflection. You don't need to answer this now. How has the concept of covenant with one God shaped the Jewish nation? How has the concept of covenant with one God shaped the Jewish nation? All right, so that's part one, creed. Let's go to part two, code, the way of life, the rule of life of the Jewish people. Of course, makikita natin yan, ano? Nasa picture dyan sa likod ko, the 10 Commandments. Commandment, in their term, mitzvah. This is the action performed with heartfelt devotion, not out of force. It is the action performed with heartfelt devotion by an adherent of Judaism in response. Here is Yahweh inviting the people, and in response, when the people say yes to this, to Adonai, to be in a covenant relationship with Him, it follows that they need to follow the mitzvah. And in the mitzvah, there's the core of the code. The core of the code that was given to Moses, Aseret Ha-Davarim, the 10 words or the 10 commandments. And out of this 10 core code comes 613 other mitzvot. But it is not a separate laws. These are not separate laws. But these 613 laws, commandments, are anchored in the Decalogue. They are still anchored in the mitzvah. It is anchored in the Aseret Ha-Devarim. Kaya kung magkataka kayo, ang dami, even if you will read the book of Leviticus, sa mga priest lang yon, applied, the Jewish priest. But then again, there's so many laws attached to it. Diba ang core niya, yung 10 Commandments. By the way, trivia. Sa 10 Commandments, pag binasa nyo sa Hebrew Bible, hindi yan naka-number ng 1. Even in the Bible the Christian Bible, it is not numbered. By verse, but it was not numbered. That's the reason why there are differences in translation, differences in application. Let's say, for example, mayroon sa inyo, magtataka bakit ang 10 Commandments ng Catholics ay ganito, pero mga born again, ganito naman. Mga Protestants, iba. So let's see. So for academic purposes, ganito, Kasi minsan nakaupo ako sa may simbahan, and then kasagsagan yun ng soap opera na ika-6 na utos. Someone asked me, brother, bakit sa Katoliko ang ika-6 na utos ay huwag kang makikiapid? Pero sa mga Protestante, ang kanilang ika-6 na utos ay huwag kang papatay. Bakit magkaiba? Alin ang tama? Binago ba talaga ng mga Katoliko ang 10 Commandments kasi pinalitan nila yung Commandment number 2 na Commandment number 2 na wag gagawa ng mga imahe? Ganun ba yon? Okay. Ito yung may kagagawan. Bakit magkaiba ng numbering ang Catholics and Protestants? Even the Orthodox, iba ang counting yan. Tignan nyo. The Jewish people, Orthodox, and the Protestants, although yung Protestants later na lang yan, reactionary to Martin Luther. Pero iba pa yung mga Lutherans, tignan nyo. So yung mga Protestant groups, yung mga born again evangelical, sama natin sila dyan. Protestant groups, later na lang yan. Pero yung mga nauna, of course, the Jewish people and then the Orthodox, who is also, who also can be considered as Catholics. Alright? But in a different right. Ang finalo nilang arrangement will be the Exodus translation or the Exodus arrangement. That can be read in Exodus 20:1-17. So yun yung arrangement nila. For Catholics and Lutherans, the one founded by Martin Luther, the original Protestant, okay, pagdating sa kabila, iba na, they adopted the Deuteronomy translation. That can be read in Deuteronomy chapter 5:6-21. Yan lang ang pinagkaiba niyan. Pero again, walang pagkakaiba sa number. Tignan yung ginawa ng Catholics and Lutherans sa first commandment. They take For Exodus chapter 20, they take verses 1 to 6 as the first commandment. For Deuteronomy, they take verses 6 to 9 to 10 as the first commandment. But for the Jewish people, meron silang variation. I think I need to focus on the Jewish translation or the Jewish version. Why? Number one will always be the core. God created. God is Lord. There's no other. God is one. Kaya yung one nila, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Eh sa Protestants nga, hindi yan kasama sa one. Nag-umpisa sila sa one, you shall have no other gods before me. But for the Jewish people, that's the second because there's only one God. And powerful din yung statement na nila kasi during that time, the neighbor nations of Israel worships many gods. And these gods can be in any form. 'Di ba may mga ginagawa sila mga idols. Hence the next commandment. Part of that second commandment, you shall not make for yourself an idol, a graven image. Kasi remember, one of the precepts presented to us by Moses Maimonides, God has no bodily form because God is a pure spirit. So how can you make an image of a God that is pure spirit? So that will definitely be idolatry. You will not worship this spirit God, but you will worship the form. That's a very different thing, no? Kaya nga minsan ang accusations sa mga Catholics and Orthodox, they worship images but they don't. Kasi even in the Bible, God commanded creation of images. Not to be worshipped, of course. For example, in the book of Numbers, God commanded Moses to create a bronze serpent that the people will look at to be healed. Dahil nagpadala siya ng mga ahas, para yung mga reklamador ay makagat, mamatay. No? But then Moses pleaded, heal the people. God can do that, but what he did was, okay, make a bronze serpent, and anyone who was bitten by serpents that will look at the bronze serpent will be healed. Another one will be the Ark of the Covenant. Later, you'll see a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, mayroon cherub, may angel sa ibabaw. It's an image. Another one will be the Temple of Solomon. The Temple of Solomon, later makikita nyo din, may mga images din doon. Anong prohibition dito? A graven image of God Himself. Kasi God is pure spirit. A different thing naman sa Christianity. Why? Tsaka nyo na malalaman pag andun na tayo. Alright. So, ayun ang sabi ko, no, based on dito sa different versions na ginamit, no, ng different groups. But the Jewish order will be this. The first commandment, God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now let's look at each commandments in context. Let's look at them, in context. Number one, the first commandment, the belief in God. Anochi Hashem Eloheka. I am the Lord your God. To have faith in God's existence. God exists. His concern for the world. His intervention at will in the affairs of the world. And His infinite might. That's their recognition of that belief. That statement. Anochi Hashem Eloheka. I am the Lord your God. Number two, lo yihe lekha, prohibition of improper worship. You shall not recognize the gods of others in my presence. The prohibition against idolatry. Third, prohibition of oaths. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Do not disgrace God's name. Kasi di ba pag nag-o-oath ka, sa atin kasi mga Pilipino, pag nag-o-oath tayo, pex man, mamatay man eh. So, hindi mo dinamay ang Diyos. But for solemn oaths, especially in these ancient religions, they will always invoke a deity. And for this the God of the Jews, They cannot do that because they would disrespect the name of the Lord. Why? What if they will not do as promised? Diba? It is a sin. It is a crime to take the name of the Lord your God, the Lord God, in that solemn oath, and then hindi mo naman napangatawanan. Number 4, the observance of sacred times. Zakhor et Yom HaShabbat Lakadesho. Meaning, remember the day of Shabbat to keep it holy. This day must be dedicated to God, who is worthy of worship, worthy of praise, and worthy of time. No? Kasi even God, sabi nga, di ba, even God rested. By the way, the term Shabbat, hindi yan, although diyan nagmula yung term na Sabbath, ano, yung Sabado, no, Saturday, diyan galing yung term na yan. Sa Jewish, ano, kasi pwede din sa Saturn, dedicated, but that's the Shabbat means seventh day. Kaya nga sa creation account, when the day that God rested, that's the seventh day. That's the day of worship. That's the day of rest. And you know, when the Israelites were exiled, when the Israelites, di ba, because of Joseph, he brought the family of Jacob, Israel, no, to Egypt because of the famine. Hindi na sila nakaalis agad-agad doon when Joseph died. So doon na dumami ang lahi ng mga Israelites. Doon na sila dumami. To the point that the Egyptian rulers were already afraid of them because of their number. So para maiwasan yung pag-aaklas, so 'di ba, may story na pinapatay yung mga bata. Then may story that they are forced now to labor of building the city of Pharaoh, including the pyramids. Diba? That's the story. To the point that they can no longer worship. They can no longer set aside time for God. Alam niyo, familiar yan. Sa setting natin ngayon, this is one good thing about Judaism that we can learn. Even in our setup today, in this very capitalist society, that labor is given premium. Even on Sundays, even on days of worship, mayroon pa ding trabaho. You cannot rest, you cannot dedicate the entire day to God. Kasi nga, iba sa inyo, kahit nagmimisa na isang araw, isang oras na lang ang misa o yung worship service ninyo, nagreklamo pa, di ba? Tagal-tagal. Pero isang oras lang naman. So we forget that important aspect of offering this day to God. So the first 4 commandments, the first 4 mitzvot of the Decalogue, kagaya ng sinabi ko kanina, no, Shalom, it restores our right order of relationship to God. It restores the right relationship to God. That's the first 4. The other 6 below restores right order of relationship to the society, to others, to the self, and to the environment. Ano yung sunod? The 5th commandment will be, wala na, next page. The 5th commandment will be honor your father and your mother. Again, Jewish tradition ang susundin natin na numbering, disregard nyo na yung sa other 5, sa other 4. So we'll follow the Jewish translation or the Jewish version. Honor your father and your mother. Respect for parents and teachers. Revering and honoring one's parents for Jews is considered a basic commandment in Judaism. At least from the perspective that there are 3 partners involved in the creation of the human being. Parents, and then God Himself. That is why itong commandment na ito is included with the first 5. Now, which actually itong fifth commandment na ito, considered pa ito na commandment between God and between man and his creator. Kaya lang, it's also restore the right order of relationship with others, particularly relationship in the family, the basic unit of society. Number 6, prohibition of physically harming a person. Lo tirjak. You shall not murder. Why do you think nilagay ito dito? You shall not murder. Magkaiba yung kill at murder, ha? You can kill, an animal. But you cannot make use of the term murder if you killed an animal. That's a different thing. Because there is this level of seriousness of violation of this commandment. And according to the Jewish tradition, murder, yung consideration sa level of seriousness nito should not be minimized. Malaki ang kasalanan talaga dito. You shall not murder. Why? Because from the very beginning, let us make man after our own image, our likeness. We are created in the human person is created in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, the human person has his or her inherent dignity. The concept of human dignity can be traced back to Judaism. The concept of human rights, the concept of giving to each what is due, nagmula yan dito, particularly in treating other people. Of course, may exception to the rule in Judaism kasi they participate in wars during that time. At nakapatay talaga sila during that time. Kapag may mga nahuli silang nakikiapid, gumagawa ng kasalanan, they throw a stone to that person to be killed. That's some exception to the rule that they applied to maintain the peace and to maintain the integrity of their society. Kaya lang they did not diminish, they did not minimize the premium that they put into the lives of the people simply because they believe that we are created in the image and likeness of God. Sabi nga nila, one must give up his or her life rather than violate it. That's how serious it is. Ngayon, we are in this generation that does not have any regard to life. Pansinin niyo yung mga pinagsisigawan ninyong karapatan. Number 7, prohibition of sexual immorality, law tinaf. You shall not commit adultery. Strictly speaking, this prohibition involves cohabiting with a married woman. Pero kasama na din dyan ang married man. Number 8, prohibition of theft, law tignov. Literally, this means you shall not steal. However, this commandment has been interpreted to refer to only one kind of theft, namely, to someone who kidnaps a person, forces him or her to work from him, and then sells him or her into slavery. At least that's the context during that time. This commandment, like the previous prohibition mentioned in the verse, murder and adultery, is a capital crime for them. Punishable by death ito, death penalty. Stealing. You shall not steal, you shall not deny falsely, and you shall not lie to one another. Number 9, prohibition of harming a person through speech. Do not give false witness or testimony against your neighbor. Yung mamarites, no? Number 10, prohibition of coveting. Tot hakmod belt reka. You shall not covet your fellow's house. You shall not covet your fellow's wife. You shall not covet your fellow's goods. That's not yours. You see, the very core of these 10 words, this Decalogue, these 10 commandments, will be maintaining the peace and order in the society. It is bringing back the right order of relationship. Number 1, between the society, between the human person and God. Number 2, between the human person and others. Number 3, between the human person and himself or herself. And number 4, between the human person and the environment. Coveting, di ba, pag tinignan mo yung context nito, you covet someone else's property, you covet everything that is not yours, including nature. It must not be. You do not have regard to the property of God because you claim it as yours, even though it's not yours to take. So again, that's the very that's the very purpose of these 10 commandments, at least in the sociological perspective. No, it was made to simply restore shalom. It was made to simply restore the right order of relationship, to prevent further damage in the society. Trivia lang yung mga precepts, let's say for example, ng Constitution ng United States, some of the precepts included in the Declaration of the United Nations were all based on the Judeo-Christian tradition of these 10 commandments. At least that's one of the gifts. That's one of the blessings of Judaism in the modern world, in the modern society. All right? So that's the code. Now, question to ponder. I want you to think about this. Why do Jews observe the Sabbath? Aside sa na-mention ko kanina, I want you to reflect deeper. Why do Jews observe the Sabbath? And if you were a Jew, why do you need to observe Sabbath? Lagay ka sa sapatos ng mga Hudyo, ng Jewish people. Why will you observe Sabbath? All right. Now we move to the third part. The third part is cultus, worship. Oh, by the way, yun na, picture sa likod ko, that's a menorah. Hindi minura, menorah. Candle stand. A very important instrument or equipment in the worship of in the worship life of the Jewish people. Now, I want to give emphasis on this four important spaces in their worship. And I would like to play some videos for this. All right, so I'll stop sharing first, and then we share another slide. So these are very important materials, important ingredients or important equipment for the worship services or the worship aspect of the Jews. All right, number one, we will take a look at these tabernacles. First, we will take a look at this tabernacle. Ayan, tabernacle. This is the tabernacle of Moses. Mapapansin niyo ano yung material, kusang material siya gawa. Puro tela. Sheets of clothes, sheets of tela. Why? Fabric. Because these people, during the time of Moses, they are wandering in the desert. They might be considered as nomads. They don't have permanent address because they are journeying from Egypt to the desert, going to the promised land. But in the entire lifetime of Moses, they did not make it to the promised land because they are hesitating. So when God commanded that a tabernacle, a temple-like structure be made, it was made up of this. It was made up of this because they need to be mobile. No? Tutupi lang nila yan. No? Parang nako-collapse yan so they can bring it to their next destination. All right, so let's watch this clip. Short lang, no? Hindi ko play lahat. Let's see. Wait lang, hindi pa pala ako nakashare. Again. So again, this is the tabernacle of Moses. Again, it was made as such, no, because they can simply collapse it so they can bring it with them to wherever destination they will go to, because they are wandering Jews during this time. They are wandering in the desert. So as you can see, ayan, there's their altar. It is where their offerings, no, the blood of the lambs were placed. That's their altar. Ayan, yung mga offer nila as sin offering. All right. Those are some of the vessels that they use in the offering. Yan. And then you can see some, yan, they put blood in it to consecrate it. Yan. And then there's this simple or small chamber. Only priests can enter it. Of course, may lababo sila dyan, hugasan ng kamay. Sa misa, pag may nakikita kayo naghuhugas ng kamay, ito yung pinagmulan yan, right. Then we enter. Later, we'll see the Holy of Holies. Yan, the menorah, as you can see on the left side of your screen. And then, I want you to notice the curtain, the curtain that separates the holy and the profane. Again, the menorah. Yan. The shewbread. The origin of the Eucharist can be traced here, yung ostia. The shewbread. And then again, only priests can eat that. And then the altar of incense before the separation of the holy and the profane. Ayan. And then now let's enter the Holy of Holies. Ayan. It was separated by the curtain. Mamaya sa Temple of Solomon, may makita pa rin tayong same ganyan. And then there we can find the Ark of the Covenant. You see an image, the images of cherubim, of angels. God commanded that image to be created. Bakit siya tinawag na Ark of the Covenant? It's because of the contents of the Ark. Mamaya, mabubuksan yan. Tigan, ayan. The contents of the Ark, number 1, the tablets of the Ten Commandments. Number 2, the staff of Aaron. And then yung nasa mangkok, that's the manna, the bread that God gave them in the desert. So only the high priest, not all priests can enter the Holy of Holies. Only the high priests can enter the Holy of Holies. All right? And it can only be done once a year. Once a year lang yan. So now, after si David, pinangarap niya magkaroon ng temple eh. Kaya lang during the time of David, God did not yet permit it. It was during the time of Solomon that the temple was built. No? And then it lasted until 70 AD. This temple lasted until 7. Of course, may mga destruction na nangyari beforehand, but it was totally destroyed in 70 AD as prophesied by Jesus. As prophesied by Jesus, that not one stone will be left in the temple. All right, so let's watch the Solomon's temple in 3D. Ayan. So, makikita nyo kahawig yan nung tabernacle ni Moses. Kahawig. Kaya lang mas malaki. Yung altar kanina, ayan na nakikita ninyo. There. That's the altar of sacrifice. Hindi na lang siya yung basta nakalagay doon sa Ayan, because during this time, madami naman ng Jewish people that makes their offering. That's why kailangan talaga mas malaking structures. And then, again, the laver, hugasan ng kamay, because this is a very bloody ritual. Sin offering, And then, let's enter. Pasok na tayo sa loob. Yan. See the images? Yung mga images pa din. There. The menorah. Mas madami ng menorah ngayon. The holy place. The altar of incense, you can still see here. Golden, no? Golden. The table of showbread or shewbread. The same thing as earlier. The altar of incense. And then let's go to the Holy of Holies. There's the Holy of Holies. And then, of course, you can see there the Ark of the Covenant. By the way, So nagtatanong nasa na yung Ark of the Covenant. Nawawala na po yan. It was said in some of the writings of the Jewish people, the Jewish authors, it was Jeremiah who hid the covenant. It was no longer it was no longer found. So until now, there's no trace of this Ark of the Covenant. If you have watched Indiana Jones, no, the Raider of the Lost Ark, they are trying to, at least in that fictional movie, they are trying to find or to search for that Ark of the Covenant. So this is the Temple of Solomon. The structured version of yung mga tela kanina sa Tabernacle of Moses. Okay? Now, let's see, ito na yung recent, ano? Paano nagdadasal itong mga Jews? Kasi wala na silang temple. That's number one. I told you earlier that in 70 AD, the temple was destroyed. So therefore, ever since 70 AD, there's no more sacrifice offered by the Jews. Wala na. There's no more sacrifice. Wala nang sacrifice of sheep and lambs. Wala na. So what they are doing now is praying. Now let's see how they pray. Ayan, if you can see the Jewish text, that's the Jewish Bible. They are praying in a standing posture, or it is called Amida. No, it is called Amida, standing prayer. Ayan. And then they are also reading the Talmud. Later, I'll tell you what a Talmud is. Okay? Pati yung sa pagkain nila ganun din. Ayan. So yan, the Amida, ganyan sila magdasal. That's how they worship now. That's how they perform their synagogue worship, because there's no more temple. There's no more temple. Ayan, that's what they read. Restore the temple service. Kasi nga wala ng temple. The temple was already destroyed. Okay, that's what they pray for. And in a specific day, for 13 days, meron silang mga specific prayers. Alright? Later, makikita natin paano sinusuot yung mga kagamitan nila. Ayan, that's how they pray. That's Amida. I tried doing this, kahit ang dinadasal ko ay yung Christian prayer book ng Christianang ng Catholics. I try to imitate the Amida. Alright? So now let's go to the tefillin. Ito yung suot-suot nila while praying, no? Especially men. Women don't put this. Alright? It's tefillin. Yan. Bakit mayroon sila sa ulo? It means that their attention, their focus is translated or directed to God. Okay? So that's what they wear. Hindi ko na yung piniplay kasi ang YouTube ay madedetect yan. Okay. Copyright. Sa arm din, nilalagay din nila yan. Tignan natin yung complete battle gear na niya dito. Pati sa fingers, nakatali yan. Okay. Yan. Complete paraphernalia. That's the tefillin. All right. So allow me to stop sharing my screen and then reshare the PowerPoint. Medyo naglolo ko lang talaga yung camera ko. I'm sorry. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. So now, after looking at the different holy places and different rituals or traditions that the Jewish people have in terms of their cultus, let's go to the very important part of their cultus, and that is their sacred scriptures. This is the last part. Okay. Now, the scriptures. Judaism is a tradition grounded in the worldview expressed in sacred text, mikra. To read, mikra, sacred text. In fact, Judaism is considered one of the religions of the book. Their book will be the Tanakh. Mikra, to read, but it is mostly called the Tanakh. Tanakh is an acronym for 3 collections of 24 biblical books: Torah, Nevim, Ketuvim. Torah, Nevim, Ketuvim. The Torah, in Greek Pentateuch, the Torah means law. Torah literally translates into law. In our Bible, that's the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The words of Moses. He narrated the words of God. Nevim, the prophets. So for them, there are 3 classifications of prophets: the former prophets, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, and Kings, and the latter prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And then meron din silang 12 prophets. Yan sila Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So as you noticed, na the same roster of books, the same roster of prophets as in the Christian Bible. Kasi yung Old Testament natin, it is somewhat a version of the Hebrew Bible, their complete Hebrew Bible. That's the Old Testament. That's Nevim. Lastly, Ketuvim. Ketuvim means writings. Ano? Psalms, Proverbs, Job, Song of Songs. Yung Ruth ko, sorry, nawala ng H. Lamentations, Kohelet, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Chronicles. So these are the Ketuvim, the writings. So again, it looks almost the same as the Old Testament Bible or Old Testament part of the Christian Bible. Now, yun yung oral Torah. That's the written Torah, by the way, written Torah. Written yung Tanakh. That's the Bible. For the Jews, there is such a thing as the oral Torah. And for them, it is the Talmud. Talmud is the collection of the teachings and commentaries of the rabbi, the teachers. Meron silang oral, meron silang written. By the way, their scriptures came from oral tradition first before it was put into writing. The same thing with Christianity. Oral tradition first before it was put into writing. Kaya pareho yung dalawang yan. It cannot only be the written tradition. It cannot only be the written form. What is common among them is there should always be the oral form. Not one is greater than the other because the two are necessary for the understanding of the faith. Kaya sa Jewish tradition, there is no such a thing as scriptures alone. That is what that was proposed later on by the Protestants. No scriptures alone. There's no such thing because scriptures is not only oral. Scriptures can also be. It's not only written. Scriptures can also be oral, tradition. So again, the written form of the Torah will be the Tanakh. The written form of the Torah is the Tanakh, and the oral form of the Torah is the Talmud, the commentaries of the rabbi. Okay, by the way, ngayon, since wala ng temple services, wala ng high priest ang Judaism. So who leads their cultus? Mga rabbi. These are teachers. Saan nagmula yung mga rabbi? They came from the roster of Pharisees. Ayan. In the olden times, they were the Pharisees. In the latter times, including this generation, they are now the rabbi. Teacher. No, even Jesus was considered a rabbi during that time, but he was not a Pharisee. On the other hand, si Paul was a Pharisee. And so the tradition of the rabbi that we have now in the Jewish tradition, they came from the group of people or the group of group of leaders in Israel during that time, yung mga Pharisees. All right? So that ends our short introduction of Judaism. Many things were not said, many things were not understood well, simply because we are still on our journey. Some aspects of Judaism can still be touched when we talk about Christianity, kasi they are very closely linked with each other. They are closely related. Remember, Jesus was not a Christian himself. Jesus was a very faithful Jew. And then, how come nagkaroon ng Christianity as a reaction to Judaism? What is the claim of Christianity about this Jesus? So that will be the content of our next lesson. What is the difference and the similarities between Judaism and Christianity? And how these two major religions contribute to the society. So kanina nakita na natin yung contribution ng Judaism. So later, next week, when we talk about Christianity, we will see the contribution of Christianity. So I hope you're still there and listening and taking down notes. And I hope you're learning something from this lesson. So once again, this is World Religion, Lesson 4, Part 1 of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions, Judaism. Not Judai, but Judaism. So have a great day. So once again, let us read their Shema prayer. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. God bless you, everyone.